Hey everyone, welcome. Today, we're cracking open what is honestly the ultimate user manual, the one for the human mind. We're diving deep into the fundamentals of psychology. We'll be looking through a bunch of really fascinating scientific lenses to figure out exactly why we do what we do. So if you've ever found yourself wondering what makes people tick, well, you are in exactly the right place.
Before we get into the heavy lifting, let me throw a quick question your way right off the bat. Which of the following is actually studied in psychology? Is it A, our hidden thoughts, B, our complex emotions, C, our observable behavior, or D, all of the above? Take a second. Okay, if you guessed D, you hit the nail right on the head. As we're going to see today, psychology isn't just about one single piece of the puzzle. It's about the entire complex picture of the human experience.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. What is psychology? 2. The birth of psychology. 3. Historical schools of thought. 4. Modern psychological approaches. And finally, 5. We'll test your mind.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, what is psychology? Let's define the science.
You know, the origin of the word itself actually tells a pretty fascinating story. It comes from two ancient Greek words. First, psyche, which beautifully translates to mind or soul, and second, logos, which means study. So you smash those together and we get the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. And I really want to emphasize that word scientific. It's not just guesswork. It's a rigorous, highly systematic method of understanding how we think, learn, feel, remember, and interact with the world.
Now, why does this matter? Well, this definition has some incredibly profound impacts in the real world, especially in healthcare. These aren't just abstract theories sitting in some dusty old textbook. By really understanding the mind, healthcare professionals can drastically improve how they communicate with patients. They can uncover underlying emotions that might actually be hindering recovery, actively reduce patient stress, and ultimately just provide much better care. It is literally a game changer.
Moving right along to Section 2, the birth of psychology, how we went from philosophy to science.
So, if we rewind to 1879, we actually find the official birthday of the discipline. A guy named Wilhelm Wundt established the very first psychology laboratory in Leipzig, Germany. And from there, the whole field just absolutely exploded. In the 1890s, early theories like structuralism and functionalism popped up. Then the 1900s brought a psychoanalysis, followed by a huge shift toward behaviorism in the 1910s, all the way up to the cognitive revolution in the 1950s. I mean, think about that. We went from setting up a single, humble lab to completely reimagining how the human brain processes information, all in less than a century.
Which kind of brings up an interesting question. Why did psychology actually need scientific methods instead of just relying on everyday observations? I mean, we observe people all the time, right? Well, think about it. Human beings are incredibly complex, and frankly, our everyday observations are completely full of bias. We tend to see exactly what we want to see. Scientific methods give us the objective, measurable, and repeatable data that we absolutely need to truly unravel the mind, without our own prejudices getting in the way.
That brings us to Section 3, historical schools of thought. Let's look at some competing theories.
Let's compare the first two major competing theories. First, you have structuralism, driven by Edward B. Titchener. His goal was to break consciousness down into its smallest, most fractured parts. It's kind of like trying to understand how a car works by taking it apart and just looking at every individual screw and gear. On the flip side, we have functionalism, introduced by William James, who took a totally different path. James focused on the why. He wanted to know how our behaviors and thoughts actually function to help us adapt and survive in our environment. It was a completely fascinating clash of ideas about how to look at the exact same human mind.
And that debate paved the way for the next incredible wave of historical detectives. First up, Sigmund Freud gave us psychoanalysis, digging deep into the hidden, unconscious mind and early childhood experiences. But then, as a massive reaction against that, behaviorists like Pavlov, Watson, and Skinner came along and argued, no, we should only look at what we can actually see and measure, observable behavior. And then finally, we get the humanistic approach with Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow, who shifted the focus entirely to human potential, free will, and personal growth.
All right, time for a really quick knowledge check. Who established the very first psychology laboratory, officially kicking off this whole scientific journey? Was it A, Freud, B, Wundt, C, Rogers, or D, Pavlov? Did you get it? It was Wilhelm Wundt, way back in 1879. Okay, let's jump into Section 4, Modern Psychological Approaches, how we view things today.
So looking at our modern toolkit, there are 7 distinct lenses psychologists use today. Now, we still use the behavioral, psychoanalytic, and humanistic approaches from our history lesson, but we've added a few more to the mix.
We have the biological approach, which looks at genetics in the brain. The cross-cultural approach, examining societal influences. The evolutionary approach, focusing on adaptation. And a really important one, the cognitive approach. This emerged from that cognitive revolution we mentioned earlier, and it focuses squarely on mental processes. Things like thinking, learning, memory, and problem solving. And remember, no single approach here is the right one. They're all just different lenses to look through.
To make this a bit more concrete, let's ground one of these modern lenses in a real-world healthcare example, specifically using the biological approach. Let's say a patient is experiencing severe depression. A professional using this biological lens wouldn't necessarily start out by asking them about their childhood. Instead, they'd look straight at brain function. They'd examine potential changes in neurotransmitter levels, genetics, or even hormonal imbalances. It's a brilliant illustration of how our physical biology so directly impacts our mental health.
Let's try to actively apply these frameworks to everyday life. Ask yourself this: which psychological approach do you think best explains how students learn in college? Is it cognitive, because of all the intense memorization and problem solving? Or maybe it's behavioral, because of the strict conditioning of grades and deadlines? Or could it be humanistic, driven by this deep inner desire for self-actualization? It's honestly a pretty amazing thought experiment, right? It makes you realize that multiple lenses can apply to the exact same situation.
All right, bringing us to our final section, Section 5, Test Your Mind. Let's do a rapid-fire quiz.
Let's quickly review 4 big concepts we've covered today. Try to answer them in your head right now before we move on. Question 1. Who is considered the father of American psychology, the guy who focused on functionalism? Question 2. Which approach cares only about observable behavior? Question 3. Who is the famous founder of psychoanalysis? And question 4. Which approach focuses on human potential and self-fulfillment? Do you have your answers locked in?
Okay, here are the answers. Number 1, William James. Number 2, the behavioral approach. Number 3, Sigmund Freud. And number 4, the humanistic approach. If you got those right, congratulations. You have officially grasped the fundamentals of how the mind is studied today.
To wrap things up, I really want to leave you with this final thought. Psychology is everywhere. It is literally in every single interaction, every decision, and every emotion that you experience. So armed with these new analytical lenses, from the cognitive to the biological to the humanistic, what invisible human behaviors are you finally going to start understanding when you step outside today? Just keep observing the world around you. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I absolutely cannot wait to see you for our next lesson, where we'll unpack the specific goals and branches of psychology. Until then, stay curious.